Hello Stackers! Today in this video we're going to cover off the art of creating a new API module. So, the easiest way of doing this is to actually just generate one. So on Windows I'm going to go actually into the directory where my API is, my project. The fastest way of getting up the little command prompt is to do Shift right click, open PowerShell here. You might see open command prompt here. And then we're going to do Socialstack, generate, API, and then just invent a name. So in this case, let's do FAQs, frequently asked questions. So the first thing is by using a plural name here, we're going to actually end up with a different type of API module, one that has a database entity in there already created for you. So go ahead and run that. And with that, we've now got this new generated module here. So you'll see that we have these different types of files automatically generated. So we have a controller, we have a service. So the controller is going to be the actual API endpoints. The service will actually manage creating, updating, and also actually getting hold of these objects. Then you have the object itself. So this is what's actually going to go into the database. The events, so these fire off whenever one is actually created or updated. You can actually, other modules can grab hold of those events and see what's going on. And then finally at the bottom here we've got the permissions. So this will define who can actually do those things. So the first place to actually go into is going to be the service. So we'll just open this up in Visual Studio. Okay, and in the generated template, the first thing you'll see here is this install admin pages line. So by default, it's just commented out because not every service actually needs one of these pages. But I'm going to uncomment this, give it a slightly different name. So this piece of text here is what you're going to actually see on the admin panel. So if I just go to the admin panel right now, the text in there is what you'll see appear here. So just go back over to Visual Studio, and this time we're just going to call it FAQs. Like that. Up next is going to be the actual icon that it uses. So this is simply a font awesome icon. So the best place to go for those is over to the font awesome cheat sheet. Now I want my icon here to be maybe like a question mark of some kind. So I'll just do a Control F for question. And right here, so this one looks pretty good. So we'll go to question circle. So FA-question circle. And then over here, this is going to be the actual fields that we see in the list. So for example, here on pages, we have ID, URL, and title. So if I'd specified ID, URL, and title here, those are the fields we're going to see in the list page. So with my FAQs, I haven't actually created any fields yet. So I'm just going to assume there's going to be one called, say, question. And we can leave it at that. So I'll save that file. Now up next, over in our new module, I'm going to go ahead and actually start adding those fields. So that's in this frequently asked question object here. So by default, a few example fields are created for you. So I'll just go ahead and uncomment this name one at the top here. And instead we'll call it question. The question people ask. It's always good to add a bit of documentation. And we'll get rid of this as well. Okay, so one other field that we're going to need is the actual answer itself. So let's call that answer JSON. So by calling this JSON at the end here, it's going to actually give us a canvas by default. So that'll allow images and essentially any other piece of content to go into this field. So by default, it is actually length restricted. So I could just remove this and again, make sure our documentation is up to date. So the answer. Okay. So now all I need to do is simply restart the API. So I'm just going to kill this here. And then in Visual Studio, hit F5. You can also click this button up here to get it started as well if you prefer. Okay. First thing to note is as it started, it generated this new database table here. And that's based on our description here. So it'll have at least a question and answer JSON field. So if we go back over to the admin panel, now if we simply refresh this, we've now got a new FAQ section. In here we can create a new question with an answer. So, hello world. Yes. I'll go ahead and create that. And there we go. So the first thing to note here as well is that it has the little localized icon. So that's because in our description, we specify that these fields can actually be localized. So if my site did have multiple locales, these fields will be translatable by default for you. It's back in the API. If I go into the FAQ section, there it is. So you can now see that we have the ID and question column as we told it to actually do over in the service here. So ID and question. And similarly, I can go in here, edit this as much as I want to. Like this. And that's about it. So that's the basics of generating a new API module. By default, everything will be editable, updatable, and you'll be able to add it straight into the admin panel as well.